Hey guys, for those who have joined, thanks for hopping on. Some of you are early, which we love to see it. We'll get started probably at the 2-minute mark, just waiting for some more people to trickle in here.
Woo woo. I'm keeping an eye on our participants list. I see our 3 panelists. I don't see any attendees yet, though. Danielle, maybe?
I wasn't sure if that was something.
Yeah.
There we go. All right, looks like people are trickling on. We'll give it a couple minutes before we get started here.
Yeah. What's up, Zoomland? It's very likely that we might take down Zoom with this webinar today.
I had some issues yesterday. Was interviewing someone for a role, and Zoom crashed on us twice. Felt really bad for the guy. But, you know, it happens. It's the new world we live in.
One room over in our den, my wife is leading a distance learning class with, with 16 sixth graders.
Oh, so, my gosh.
Yes. So if at any point in time you feel like, oh man, I'm in Zoom so many, imagine doing 3 hours and 15 minutes of Zoom with 16, 11, and 12-year-olds.
I can't imagine. I honestly think that teaching children over Zoom these days is probably somewhat similar to some of these sales enablement sessions. I'm curious if there's like learnings we can take from that, you know?
No, there has to be.
We can herd sixth graders into a learning environment. We could probably herd customers, partners, sales reps. Yeah, I think Zoom is presenting a lot of unique challenges today for sure.
Yeah, Robert's feeling the pain too, so he knows what's up.
I saw Robert just joined.
No.
We can wait and get started probably in about a minute.
Danielle, is there another Danielle Scott that just joined that looks like Adrian's face?
No, where are you seeing that?
Oh, and it's gone. It was an extra little panel. It looked like a panelist window.
On Zoom?
On Zoom, yeah. Right now we have me, you, and then the WorkRamp logo for Rachel, our wonderful host and attendee. Yeah.
That one. Let me see. I'm going.
No, it's gone now. I think Adrian disappeared to the ether.
I think Adrian was the last host, and we probably forgot to change it out.
No, all good.
See if marketing can find a glamour shot of me to put up there in the next one. Just kidding, no pressure.
Yeah.
All right, 11:02. Let's go ahead and get started. I think some other people are going to trickle in, but we can kick things off here. Awesome. So today we'll be covering how Branch reimagined customer ed with a consolidated learning technology architecture. So I know, Tim, you're using tools like Pendo, README, Branch, and WorkRamp to make this happen. And for those of you who aren't familiar with WorkRamp, I work there. I'm director of sales. My name is Danielle. Nice to meet you all. WorkRamp is the leading enterprise training platform for educating internal employees and customers at scale. And our customer training platform in particular powers learning for a lot of great companies like Zoom, 8x8, and Branch. And so today we actually have Tim Chingos, who leads business ops at Branch Metrics. So Tim, you do a whole lot of things over there. You manage revenue ops, enablement, and business systems. Super excited to have you today. I'm hoping you can kind of walk us through the learning technology architecture you've built out and share your learnings and best practices around actually building and scaling this type of infrastructure.
Heck yeah, Danielle. Thank you guys so much for having me. Really looking forward to the conversation.
Yes, awesome. I am as well. Maybe a great place to start would be, I'd love to actually hear more about your background and how you got into business ops here.
For sure. So I was reflecting on this morning. One of my first jobs in the Bay Area was in 2009. I worked at Trulia, back then a fledgling real estate search engine startup, and I was an inside sales rep. And I was given real estate agents that had their first name with the letter K. And I was doing my 50 cold calls a day. It was pretty miserable, and I wasn't really getting too far. So one day we were in Salesforce back in the day when Salesforce had tabs. I ran a report on all like kind of the closed won deals, and I saw that they were in states that were on an ocean: California, Florida, New York, Jersey, Georgia. And I'm like, oh wow, and that makes sense. Real estate prices are higher in coastal areas than they are maybe in the middle of the country. So I made a report. I sorted by states that touched bodies of water, and my conversion rate like magically went up, like because I was calling better leads, like total craziness. fast forward through several jobs. Before Branch, I was a sales ops manager at a project management company where I really kind of cut my teeth in formally working with revenue operations. Had the privilege of working with the development side of the business as well. So the developers who were doing our custom Salesforce integrations, where I really got a good insight into kind of really building out architecture to support business goals. And then here at Branch, I was employee number 20. I joined about 5.5 years ago. We're now over 400 employees in 10 offices worldwide. We're a marketing attribution and analytics company really focused on mobile, doing some cool work there. So I've had the opportunity to really build it from the ground up. And one of the cool things for folks if they interact with Salesforce or any other types of, I guess, business critical systems, like I was the original Salesforce admin, and I work with the team now, and we've had some folks in there, but I've always been like one of the chefs in the kitchen, which is great because so often we show up places and between consultants and contractors and FTEs that have come and gone, it can be a bit of a hot mess, but my hot mess is my hot mess. So yeah, that's a little bit about me and my background.
So want to learn a little bit more. I love the intro on your background. I would love to hear about your current role at Branch and kind of what you're responsible for today.
Yeah. So what I do primarily is I lead our revenue operations organization, which includes sales ops, marketing ops, customer success ops, as well as our deal desk function. Very fortunate to work with an incredible leader there, my colleague Steven, who he's my director of revenue ops, and he oversees and does a fantastic job there. I typically get involved as we're making larger changes to our Salesforce kind of infrastructure, helping with more of like the stakeholder management with our exec team. And then the two teams where I spend most of my time is business systems engineering. So a team of about 3 engineers that we do all of our integration work, all of the technical work for the business side. So if you need an engineer, odds are our core engineering team for infrastructure and product and data, like they're all building our product. They're supporting our customers. They're making improvements there. So getting their time is next to impossible. So if you need something, come to me, and I'll work with my team. We have a few contractors, and as well as one full-time employee, but enough to get it done. And then my other role is leading our KTR team, which stands for Knowledge, Training, and Resources. So this is where kind of WorkRamp really falls in. At Branch, we did an engagement survey. We do engagement surveys of our employees twice a year. So in Q4 of last year, we saw some feedback in the engagement survey that our employees wanted better access to information to do their jobs more effectively. So we kind of assembled a bit of a little tiger team, which my boss kind of tapped me to lead, and that kind of turned into our KTR team, which now has like 2 full-time employees. That folks we kind of brought in from different groups, and then a couple of really strong cross-functional partners who are leading different areas, specifically our knowledge center, our branch university powered by WorkRamp, as well as partnering with support and product marketing and our sales teams to make sure they have what they need for both training employees, but also given all the changes we've seen just in technology and a big focus on taking care of customers due to kind of global health crises, a major effort and focus on external training and supporting existing customers.
Totally. Great. You definitely handle a lot of different parts of the business there. I'm curious, before we kind of dive deeper into the customer ed architecture specifically, I'm curious, what's your general philosophy, if you have one, around creating business systems?
No, for sure. I think Branch, so the funny part of the story is that when Branch hired me, they hired me to lead customer support and customer success. And this was like a role that wasn't too well defined, but I got introduced to them. There was a good fit. So they brought me on. But when I got there, I realized, well, wait a minute, there's no really good sales process. There's no strong like acquisition channel. So let's like kind of solve that first to continue getting folks in the door. And I share this because I was able to leverage like my sales ops background. So Branch kind of accidentally hired an operations person. And too often organizations will, in my opinion, underinvest in operations, in whether it's revenue, sales, marketing operations, just business operations more broadly, because it's tough to see the value when either your servers are falling down or you need to hire people more quickly or your board's pushing you for more revenue. Very seldom is it like, well, let's make sure our systems work really well.
Right. It's hard to kind of correlate ROI in a direct way.
it's tough to, it can be very difficult. So I share this context to say they kind of accidentally got an operations person who sort of knew what he was doing. I'll give myself a little credit. So I got into a model of like, hey, let's if we're going to build things, like, let's do it right. Like the company had some decent funding. Well, we had some decent funding early on. So we were not as cash constrained. It was like, let's just do it right. So I kind of really adopted the philosophy of like, let's build our systems so they're like a little bit bigger than our britches, like they're a little bit more than what we need right now, so we can grow into them.
You don't have to tear them down in 2 years and start from scratch.
No.
So always thinking about scalability even from the outset here.
Yeah, you have to, because typically the challenge is usually if we wait for our systems to break, they're breaking because typically good things are happening.
Right. Yeah.
And the last thing that you want to do when good things are happening, you just want to pour more gasoline on the good fire. Yep. You don't have to go drive 2 more fire trucks, over to the scene. So
makes sense. Cool. I love that answer. If you don't mind, I'd love to kind of dive into the next section here, go a little bit deeper into an actual overview of your learning architecture here. I know you went ahead and sent over a really awesome diagram for us to kind of use as we talk through this today. So we can kind of go off that. And just for anyone listening, if you hear squeaks, don't be alarmed. My kitten is really mad that I'm not paying attention to him, and so he's making some noise here, but hopefully it's not too distracting.
No, yeah, let's just jump right in.
Yeah, amazing. So I'm curious, I know you have a very consolidated set of systems here at Branch, and that's kind of been your philosophy in terms of putting this together. Why is consolidation of this technology infrastructure so important to you guys?
Yeah, so a big part of kind of how I think about it is technology is easy. Like it's pretty straightforward. I can go buy some tech. I can delegate it to one of my team members to set it up. If I want to do it myself, I can go set it up. I can roll it out. I can lead a training. What's hard is change management, accountability, like leadership and executive alignment. And as I think about from kind of a training, content is very difficult, especially, we consider ourselves a pretty technical platform. We sell to product managers, marketers, developers. So creating and maintaining content is incredibly difficult. So as I thought about building more of a knowledge and training architecture, I wanted to do my best to thoughtfully solve the hardest problems and set myself up to successfully solve those. And a non-negotiable right from the get-go was like, as much as we can to have single systems. Where this was most apparent was as we were thinking through like training platforms and whether we wanted to do one internal training versus one external training. I advocated very strongly to have those as a single system, which is what we use WorkRamp for.
Totally.
And then more broadly, even with like our help center, like we migrated help center platforms. Just this morning, I learned that there are a few vestiges of our old knowledge base that are like lingering in the Google archives. So, working to take those down to provide a consolidated experience from a help center for our customers as well.
Yeah, makes total sense. I know this is one of the reasons we think of you as such a great thought leader. We're so aligned on this kind of a consolidation play here. I know that's exactly what WorkRamp's been trying to do too, is allow you guys to train employees as well as your customers and kind of reuse some of that same training. You mentioned that creating content is a difficult part. We don't want you to have to do that twice in 2 different systems, right? To that point, I'd love for you to kind of walk us through the current architecture. I know WorkRamp is just a piece of this puzzle. There's a lot of other awesome systems you're using, README, Pendo. Would love to kind of hear how you're thinking about all that in time.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm gonna caveat for our listeners today that this is kind of aspirational. This is kind of where we're going. But let me talk about it. I'll talk about it as if we're there, and then if we want, we can kind of back into kind of where we're at today. So 3 primary areas. Top left is the branch dashboard. This is where our customers engage with our product. They look at the dashboard, the metrics, the graphs, they create links, all sorts of exciting things. If we kind of work our way down to the bottom, our help center, which is hosted by README, both our technical as well as kind of more user guide documentation. And then in the top right is our branch university, which we formally launched earlier this month, university.branch.io. So WorkRamp hosted, this is external customer training. So the simplest thing we do is we link these platforms between one another. So in the branch dashboard, you can access Branch University, you can access our help center, and then you can access the other platforms, vice versa. we're working towards having single sign-on across all platforms. So using the branch credentials to log into to Branch University and to also log into our help center. There is a suggest edits functionality. So people, so our users can contribute to improving our documentation. With that kind of in place, we can then leverage Pendo. Pendo is, they offer a lot of different tracking capabilities for what our users doing on your website. A lot of tagging and robust analytics there, but they also offer a resource centers. And Pendo's a new tool for me, but those who might be more familiar with it, it's very similar to Intercom, just without chat. So announcements, product tutorials, integration, so you can like search help centers. So one of the things that we're working towards is integrating Pendo across all three of these platforms. Awesome. to help facilitating moving people between locations. But a big thing is I have a team member working on putting Pendo, putting a search functionality of our help center inside of Pendo. So classic use case, I'm working on creating a branch link on our dashboard. I have a question, I can click on the kind of the little help dot, this little dot in the bottom right-hand corner, and then do a quick search in our help center from there and access the information without ever having to leave the dashboard. And then the last piece there that we're working on getting set up is a tool called Solvvy, which I kind of call our knowledge-based funnel layer. So it's the opportunity for users who have questions, they want to contact a support team, you type in your query, they use a little bit of natural language processing, trying to parse out what you're getting, work towards displaying an answer to that question with a help article. They also will facilitate, like, if you want to like cancel or things like that, they can facilitate walking you down a path of like, you can set that up of like, if you want to do this, it's very obvious. We're going to show you the exact things you need to do. But the goal of deflecting tickets and minimizing what ends up in the red cylinder, which are cases for our technical support team that works out of the Salesforce platform. Let me kind of pause there, Danielle, and if you want me to maybe unpack anything or talk a little bit more in detail about different parts of this.
Yes. Well, okay. So I had a question and a thought as you were going through that. My first reaction here, sorry, I'm going to move this kitten out of the way.
Yes.
Very interested in what you're talking about as well. My first reaction, Tim, as I'm seeing this is extremely well thought out. It is big for our britches, right? When we talk about this is where we're going, you've kind of mapped out all the systems you plan to have working together, and you're quite a good bit of the way there in terms of getting them all set up. I think my question is, to build out a system that you can grow into, it takes a lot of foresight and a lot of planning. It's kind of a proactive way of thinking about these systems as opposed to like a reactive, in real time kind of way of like patching things together. I think this is the goal and the dream, right? This is what everyone wishes they could do. I'm curious, is it usually a stumbling block at organizations to kind of predict what you're going to need and map this out ahead of time to start putting the pieces in place so intelligently? I'm just curious how you were able to do that, and if you have any kind of tips for the listeners here on
yeah,
in advance.
As much as possible, getting aligned early with the leadership team was essential to doing this.
Yeah.
This specific diagram came out of an ask from my senior vice president of customer success, where he's asking like, hey, like I want our organization to have best in class knowledge and documentation. Like, help me understand what that looks like. And we went through a couple iterations, and what we realized was that there was a big kind of ecosystem play here. And it wasn't just about our CSMs giving great support. It wasn't just about a help center that had the articles and the documentation. It was about all of them interplaying together. And as we kind of dug more and more into it, we realized that it's kind of like a virtuous cycle, in the same sense, if we are helping our customers, that content can help our CSMs support our enterprise accounts. And our sales team can use that during the sales process to educate prospects. And we constantly get feedback from all the different parties along the way to improve it. So I think it's just really getting really clear goals on, well, first, what's your business trying to do? And then to the extent that, okay, well, earlier on, we wouldn't have wanted this because we wanted to talk to every customer. We wanted to hear that real-time feedback. But as we grow and scale and work to be more efficient, well, then we need to have people self-serving that information, and that's kind of a big focus for us as we're kind of championing our way through 2020.
Right. the one-to-one interactions versus that scalability factor as you guys grow. It is a trade-off, right? But I think, I know you've taken a lot of care to kind of balance that out and make sure you're not, you're losing closeness with your customers as you do scale and make this easier for them to kind of learn in great masses, right? I'm curious too. So I loved hearing about how you involved kind of leadership from the beginning. This is obviously top down. You're trying to align all of this with the larger needs of the business in all of the different departments. How did you kind of go about taking into account the different needs and maybe criteria and requirements for like your learners, like your customer base, in addition to these business needs that you guys have and systems need that you guys have internally?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds simple, but by just talking to them, I think was a big piece of reaching out, whether it's having, we had a lot of conversations with ICs, with managers, with department leaders. We know we need to do more work in actually talking to our customers. We felt though that there was enough, like, dare I say, obvious work that we needed to do to give ourselves that strong foundation and that strong baseline. So that's where our effort's been focused right now. But by having those conversations, understanding their specific pain points, getting feedback from them, really helping them. And then I'm in a bi-weekly like stakeholder meeting where we're going over our full KTR roadmap and what we're doing, what's coming next, to ensure that like things change very quickly in our industry. So making sure that what we talked about 2 months ago is still relevant for us to be working on today.
Got it. Awesome. That's super helpful. Wanted to check and see if there are any questions from the audience yet before we kind of move on to the next section. I haven't seen any come up in the Q&A, but feel free to throw these in there. We're going to continue kind of talking about building this out. So kind of moving on to the next topic here, how to actually go about building this architecture framework. We kind of talked about your thought process that goes into planning this, but I'm curious to hear how you actually start putting this together. So first question would be, when is a good time that companies should start thinking about building this type of learning architecture framework, especially for customer education, since I know that's what we're covering today?
Yeah. So essentially when scale is becoming more and more of a priority, that's kind of one of the big indicators. It was a big indicator for us when we needed to focus on scale. I think a lot of times we're going to have bits and pieces along the way. There are very few companies that are similar to ours that don't at least have a help center. So we're going to have, I don't say vestiges. We're going to have pieces of the puzzle that are already going to be in place. From a more architecture perspective, I think when we want to start looking at solving the problem holistically, and we want to move away from, the big thing for us was moving away from everything being so siloed. So an example is we have a lot of integration partners. So our business development team, they were very thoughtfully managing a lot of those relationships, but we wanted to make sure that all of that great knowledge they had was accessible to all of our customers, where wasn't as big of a deal when we were smaller and when we only had a handful of integration partners. So once we start seeing the silos start forming, which I know in my experience, I've seen other companies, definitely it happened at Branch, the ecosystem and the overall framework can help kind of really thoughtfully break those down, bring those stakeholders to the table and be like, hey, let's just be in this little community together so we can support one another.
Cool. No, that's definitely helpful. I'm also curious, when you go about putting these pieces together, which pieces of the framework come first for you? And also, how did you kind of figure that out? Like, how did we determine what pieces need to fall in place in what order here? Since I know the diagram you showed us, there's a lot of systems working in tandem here, and I'm just curious how that ordering went.
Yeah, so start with what you have. I think first and foremost, like look at like what do we have? I think most teams will have a knowledge base and they'll have a support team. Like those are the two like really obvious two places that we had. And then from there, it's really drilling into the pain points. Like, for us, we had a kind of a totally custom built knowledge base that we hosted on GitHub. We used fancy like development, not fancy, but we used like development technology where we had to like run a build. Which if you're a developer, that means that you have to actually run the code and build it, which took 20 minutes, which meant a single edit took 20 minutes. Yeah. So to us, that was like a really strong signal that we needed a more flexible and a more nimble help center partner. So we work towards that. And then my main approach is work on the really obvious stuff. While you're doing that, talk to other people to understand where the other gaps are. So we knew there was a big gap that our customer success team was feeling very, very strained as we were acquiring more customers. it's obviously not thoughtful business strategy just to hire more support staff, whether it's CS or support or whoever, as you hire more customers. If your costs go up linearly with your revenue, we're just treading water. So we saw some really large needs there on the training side. We saw some large needs on the internal training side. So that gave us strong insight that we needed to kind of to fill that gap as well.
Yeah.
So I think for us, it was really looking for the needs, and then so essentially the architecture and the ecosystem needs to solve for the problems. It needs to fill the gaps that you have. So but do the obvious stuff along the way, and then it kind of, I don't know, I'm weirdly comfortable like starting something and not knowing where I'm going, and then just trying to just kind of like look, just kind of keep looking as you're kind of driving down the road, and then let the pieces come together.
Yeah. Well, I think what I'm hearing from you is that it sounds like, so a question I always have on my mind is there a magic bullet? Is there a way to do this? Is there a correct framework? It sounds to me, correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds to me what you're saying is you have to listen to the needs that are going on in your own business. You kind of have to figure out like where the gaps are at branch or wherever it is that you work. So my guess is there a magic bullet for a framework for this, or is it going to be dependent on kind of the needs and the gaps in a particular org at a given time?
So definitely more the latter. I think there are a few magic bullets is maybe a little bit stronger of a term. There are a few cornerstones, and I think having a cornerstone of, okay, what do escalations look like? So what does your support team look like? Yeah. The cornerstone of a strong knowledge base that you can direct people to, I think are very, very foundational. And again, that's nothing earth shattering. I don't think I just blew anybody's mind there. But making sure that you're also, that if we were just to jump in and just, build an ecosystem, but like the foundation is totally crumbling, well, then that's just silly because the house is going to fall down.
Yeah.
But yeah, no magic bullets, but there's a couple of really important things, and they'll vary based on the business and the vertical, but they're typically, like, again, support, knowledge base are the two big ones.
Yeah, those are the must-haves. I know you mentioned at the beginning kind of that you already had a lot of buy-in from the top down because you were kind of collecting information on the needs of leadership as you kind of went about structuring this. But I'm sure that along the way you kind of picked up things you needed that they didn't know about originally. So from a logistical standpoint, how do you get buy-in here from the leadership team when you're putting this all together? Can you share with us how you went about doing that?
Yeah, for sure. So a lot of meetings, meetings. Sorry, sidebar. When I was an SDR in 2010, I used to look at my boss and be like, you guys are in meetings. It looks like so much fun. And now I'm in meetings all day, and it's like, man, I want to be left alone to do some work. Right. But no, it's having conversations with leadership to understand what their goals are. For me, it was really articulating it in almost like an OKR doc, so objectives and key results of, like, we set up the what are the foundations, what's like the philosophy. So for us, it's like accurate content, easy to find, and that it's like it actually solves, it's targeted towards a specific audience. So we kind of had like our knowledge values, if we will, and then we built around that some kind of broader initiatives on help center, partnerships, partnership programs, branch university. We had to do some design work, calling out the ongoing work, and just really listed out, here are the projects and the initiatives that we're tackling. And I kind of provided a timeline on when we were doing those, and those got shared with with leadership. And it's like, hey, this is what we're doing. Like, do you agree? Do you disagree? Are we missing something? Really giving voice to the individuals who will be impacted by this work, to ensure that we're not misprioritizing or doing things in the wrong order.
Yeah, 100% agree. Great. I'm glad that you were able to get that buy-in. It sounds like you went about it in a really intelligent way there.
Yeah. I guess I want to call out, it was very helpful that our chief operating officer says, this is a problem I want to solve. Mm-hmm. I think given the inherent cross-function, the cross-functional nature of this work, this is an incredibly difficult thing to do bottoms up. Even at my level, I consider myself a senior-ish leader at branch, this would have been difficult for me to do. And I would say this would be very, very difficult for like an enablement manager, like maybe an IC who's really focused on this. And for individuals who are in those roles, I would encourage them to go find a champion, go find a senior leadership champion, especially depending on the size of your organization, but find somebody that you can sell on the value of this type of work, because that's going to facilitate you being a lot more successful, at least in my experience.
In another question around being successful, it relates to maintenance. And this is another kind of logistical question I have about maintaining this type of a system. How do you maintain the infrastructure over time, and how do you plan for that maintenance? So personnel needed, resources needed, how do you guys map that out and make sure that that's in place long-term?
Yeah, so first off, making sure that you have resources. I think a lot of initiatives like this are frequently side projects where it's like, one of the directors of customer success, they're going to work with their team to build some training videos because they think it'll be it's a need. But then we go through a new product launch and the accounts double, and suddenly like these training videos that were phenomenal have fallen by the wayside and they're out of date. So I think it's important to be incredibly deliberate about allocating resources to this business priority. So it needs to be a business priority, and then allocating resources to have it to support and maintain it. Because too often I've seen where a lot of really spectacular work is done, but then there isn't the energy and the effort behind it to ensure that it continues to be, to provide value. And I've seen this in even some of my own work, things that I've started, and then it kind of like that doesn't stop caring, and then I let it kind of, wither on the vine. But along those lines, I think it's also important to, to kill the projects that are no longer valuable. Like if we realize that, well, that was a cool idea, or it worked, or it didn't, or we shifted priorities, we'll deliberately go out and kill it. Sunset it, move on from it, so everybody knows what the priority and the focus is. I think it's important to have that clarity.
Yeah, being intentional about whatever it is that you're doing. And I know that it probably helps that you kind of mentioned getting such strong buy-in from leadership, making sure it's in alignment with their goals. I'm sure that actually helps a lot with this kind of maintenance over time, making sure that there are resources there as long as it continues to be a priority.
Yeah.
There was a question from the audience that I think actually I want to get to in the next section, because it really relates to kind of scalability at different stages of the business, how you kind of think about changing this as we grow. And so I wanted to kind of move on to that last section here and talk about scale and business impact. So that's kind of the next area of questioning here. My question for you, Tim, to start off would be, what are the pain points that you have seen at Branch as you've scaled out some of this infrastructure?
Ooh, a lot of them. So piggybacking off the conversation we had around resourcing is realizing the resourcing needs. So one of the pain points I ran into recently is that there was a change I wanted to make that did require an integration with like our product dashboard. And this required me partnering with our product engineering team. And now they're heads down on a very full roadmap, as I'm sure all of our product teams are. And I did my best to kind of navigate that, but ultimately ran into a very large blocker where I essentially like I put 2 months of work of like my one developer, I put 2 months of his work in the back burner because I got blocked because our teams were just like totally overloaded.
Yeah.
So having line of sight into dependencies, I think, is incredibly important. If you are dependent on another team, getting their buy-in early, well, first off, understanding the dependencies, and then getting their buy-in, and as much as you can to tie them down to a commitment, I think is a big learning that I've had.
Yeah, avoiding a bottleneck there.
Yeah. Sorry.
Oh, just general pain points.
Yeah.
That you've experienced, and obviously not having line of sight into dependencies is one of them, but I'm curious if there are others that.
No, and other pain points I would say is, I think it's on that similar vein. So a lot of times we'll leverage shared resources or cross-functional resources. Finding a way to ensure that the work that you need to do aligns with what they care about, either personally or professionally. Like it's of course we can never make anybody do work. It's even more difficult to arm twist a cross-functional team member. So as much as possible, making sure that your team is excited about the work, they're not just being told to do it, that it's supporting where they want to go professionally.
Yeah.
Making sure that, in the sense that if you're driving this or you're part of this, be that strong cross-functional leader to engage the whole team as much as possible, because you'll get better work. It'll happen quicker, and everybody will be in a better mood about it.
Yeah, and hopefully, ideally, from the top down, their org might have the same goals, or an aligned goal to what your team is trying to accomplish. Right. That's a great tip. I'm curious. So scaling is one thing, but kind of iterating is another. And so I think, how do you, it sounds like you have all these systems kind of mapped out. We're planning to scale with them. As you run into changes and problems along the way and things that you did not foresee, how do you kind of make this system resilient so that it's responsive to the changing needs of the business as you scale, as more time goes by, as things change and you run into kind of obstacles that were unforeseen before?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, feels like a very vanilla answer, but as you're setting things up, trying to keep them as flexible as possible. So a few specific examples, like when we are, so to use a WorkRamp example, when we're building out customer training, we work to do 1 to 5 minute videos, taking more of a multimedia approach in our curriculum, such that if a part of our product changes, we only have to update a section of a video or a section of a document to improve that, as compared to doing a 20-minute straight shot video training that I know for certainty will be out of date in 2 months' time. I think from like a development perspective, making sure that, I mean, consolidation is good as much as we can, but making sure that we have the right tools to solve the right problems. So, as WorkRamp or other platforms maybe improve their functionality, I can, maybe kind of trim from one area to move it over to a different one. So again, making sure that you have the ability to kind of swap different pieces out. I think sometimes we can, not sometimes. I'd say this is the balance of like everything I'm doing today. If I wanted to, I could smash everything into Salesforce, and I think some parts would be spectacular, and I think Salesforce is fair to pick on. Some parts would be horrendous because there's just some things they don't do well, and that can be said about every vendor, branch, WorkRamp, everybody. Like we have our strengths and we have our things where it's like, no, go find somebody else. That's not us.
Yeah.
So I think having the right tool for the right job, making it modular enough so you can kind of swap out different pieces. You can, again, kill the ones that aren't relevant. You can boost up the ones. You know what scale and growth looks like as you grow with your different vendor partners. And I think that's given us the flexibility that we've needed to adapt to kind of our business and the needs of our customers.
Great. I'm glad to hear you guys are planning to be adaptive. And the question from the audience is kind of right along those lines. So it's relating to company stage. So the person asked, how does building this architecture change as you grow? How does it apply to a startup, a scale up, or like a huge enterprise? And what's important for us to be thinking about at each stage besides just being generally adaptive, responsive, and iterative there?
All right, so I'll share my perspective because we've kind of gone through all these stages. Like when you're a startup, you just do it. Like there's very little red tape. Like it's a lot easier to go grab the 2, 3, 4 stakeholders, pull them into a room, get different perspectives, and then just do it. And I think for companies that are excited about making these investments early, the more investments you can make in this stage, then the quicker you can get a foundation in place that you can build off of. Or again, you can kill it later on if it becomes irrelevant. I think as you're scaling up, now we're starting to get a bit more thoughtful. Now I think we want to really focus on the 2 or 3 key pillars that are going to be most relevant for you. Again, aligned with wherever. What are we working on? Land grab, new customer acquisition. Are we trying to expand within our existing customer base? Like there will be some guiding initiative or guiding goal for the business. So using those so again, hitch yourself onto a business goal. By itself, everything we're talking about today is a cost center, and it can be cut when budgets are tight. So, but when we attach ourselves to goal, then we're ROI positive. Then we're driving value. We're saving headcount. We're whatever it might be. So attaching yourself to goals can really inform in that scale up stage. Well, here's where we want to make some really thoughtful investments. Yeah. And I think the enterprise step is where like really thinking about the ecosystem, because that's where the silos are going to really start to show. You have at least for us, we have a 100-person post-sales organization globally. We have a 40-person sales organization, a 15-person marketing department. So a lot of these groups are doing their own work. And we just can't be successful as we grow from 400 to 1,000 employees with all those things happening in isolation. So you're kind of forced to do it at that point in time, I'd argue, if you want to do it well.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the ecosystem is even more important.
Makes total sense. You mentioned ROI when you were talking about the scale up phase. I'm curious, how do you measure and communicate the business impact, and why is that so important?
Yeah, no. So first off, this is very difficult. And I guess I'll show a little bit of vulnerability and say that I have a line on my roadmap spreadsheet that is articulate success metrics for this group. And
Okay.
that's because, again, back to some of my earlier comments, some of the work we had to do is very obvious, just things that we needed to improve that we probably should have done earlier on as an organization, but we're playing catch up and we're getting it done. I think a couple key things for us that we're looking at is, so FTE time savings. So I know as we've launched our training, our branch university, I want to track kind of course completion by our enterprise clients, because then I can attribute that directly back to hours of a CS time that I've saved. One of the things that's going to be important to us as we work with that ticket deflection technology. So how many searches are we getting there? How many tickets are we potentially deflecting?
Yeah.
There's a little bit of work. I'd say like softer kind of lagging metrics on like page views. What are the most viewed pages? As we look at additional content creation, like velocity of content creation, we're working to partner more closely with our product team to have docs live before we ship our new product. So making sure like time between docs available to, again, softer metrics, and product being available. So those are a couple that have been kind of meaningful for us and that we're going to keep focusing on.
What I'm kind of hearing too is it seems like it's really important to have systems that are tracking and reporting from the get-go, because if you don't have that baseline information, how can you even know what's changing, right? And this is a struggle I see with a lot of our kind of earlier stage or mid-market sized companies where they don't yet have all the infrastructure they need to track. And so it becomes harder and harder to prove out what new systems are kind of driving that impact. So, I mean, I come from a metrics driven background as well. I was at Mixpanel for several years. So I think it's super important to be tracking this from the start. So question for you, Tim, what's next? And feel free to answer that as open-ended as you'd like, but especially when it comes to the customer ed piece at Branch, I'm just curious where you guys are going.
I mean, so I think I mentioned a lot of what I was talking through from an architecture perspective is, again, a bit aspirational. There's still a lot of work we need to do there. A big next thing for us that's top of mind for me is having really clear alignment on how our support team fits into this. I think it can be difficult sometimes to translate the day-to-day problems of any teams, whether it's our support org, whether it's our customer success org, whether it's our sales team. So translating day-to-day problems and trying to zoom out a bit into thinking about what are some scalable solutions that we can put in place. So we're continuing to develop a strong relationship with our support org of what we can do with them. We're actually in midst of rolling out a new FAQ process to help support them. A couple things that are, I guess, top of mind for us are just all of the integrations. So we're creating an integration with Algolia to have stronger search in our help center, because we're not happy with the out-of-the-box search provided by the help center vendor. We're looking at building that integration between our help center and Pendo, so we have that search functionality. So I think for us, it's just knitting these pieces together, because we have the building blocks are all there, and I think what's next for us is actualizing a lot of that vision I walked you all through to make it easy for our customers to access the right content wherever they are on our platform.
Awesome. All right, so I can sense some changes coming to that diagram.
Yeah. Well, they'll go from dotted lines to firm lines, or I can say like we're actually doing all of that. But yeah.
Amazing. You guys have big changes ahead. That's great. I know we're about up for time here. Before I kind of wrap up, I wanted to see if you had any kind of like final or closing thoughts. Again, not a magic bullet, but just kind of something to leave the audience with in terms of your general thoughts on this now that we've kind of talked through a lot of these areas today.
Yeah, I think I touched on this a little bit. One of my favorite things I love to tell my team and my colleagues is that technology does not solve problems. Like a decent strategy solves problems.
Yeah.
And a lot of times technology solutions will catalyze our ability to do things at scale. So I really encourage, I even had a conversation with one of my team members today. We're looking at Gainsight, looking at customer success software. And we had a conversation of like, hey, how do we sell this internally? It's like, no, we need to wrap this around our CS team, being as thoughtful as possible, scaling up their efforts. Like we want to run all these plays to support our customers better. A tool like that could help. Maybe it won't. Like maybe it's someplace in between, and we can have that discussion once we have the strategy in place. So while it sounds silly, I think sometimes I know I can get so caught in the weeds of like, oh, we need an LMS, we need a new help center platform, we need to make improvements to Salesforce, but making sure that the work you're doing, the work that I'm doing, is tied to a meaningful goal for the business, because that's what's going to get you headcount. That's what's going to get the attention of cross-functional teams. That's what gets you budget. And that gives us all those sexy things we can put on our resume to get new jobs whenever that time comes too. So
great takeaway. Honestly, that resonates with me a lot. I could not agree with that more. You can't just throw technology at a problem. You need to have a strategy, right?
Yeah.
Align to something bigger. Well, thank you so much. I know we're up for talk time here. Tim, I love learning about your strategy for customer add at branch. Really appreciate you taking the time to talk through it with us today.
Cool. Thanks, Danielle. It's great hanging out. We enjoy being a WorkRamp customer. You guys are still in that small enough stage where you want to hang out with all of us, and you're not like, no, scale, go away. So it's a lot of fun partnering with you guys as well. I'm glad I get to do this.
We love it. You guys are the best part of my job. So I'm glad that you got to come on today. And for everyone else listening, we'll make sure to send a copy of the recording out. But yeah, thanks everybody for joining, and have a really great rest of your day here.